A grand apartment in Paris, the walls hung with priceless paintings, the rooms filled with the most beautiful things money can buy. And somewhere inside it, a man who cannot get out of bed. His name is on boutiques in every capital on earth. It is stitched into the clothes of queens and film stars. It is one of the most valuable names in the history of fashion. And the man who owns it is hidden away in a darkened room, unraveling, while the world outside is told he is simply resting. For decades, the people around him will go to extraordinary lengths to keep what happens in this apartment a secret. The question is why? What is wrong with the most celebrated designer alive, and why must it never be spoken of? He is one of the most gifted designers who has ever lived. Some call him the greatest since the founder of Dior himself. He changed what women were allowed to wear. He took the power of a man's wardrobe and gave it to them. And at the very height of it, when the whole world wanted a piece of him, he began quietly to come undone. This is the story of a shy boy from North Africa who was bullied so badly he could barely speak, who rose to the top of Paris fashion before he was 25, built an empire worth hundreds of millions, and spent the rest of his life at war with himself. To understand all of it, we have to go back. Because the thing that made him a genius and the thing that destroyed him may have been exactly the same thing. He was born in 1936, not in France, but in Oran, a coastal city in French Algeria. He grew up in a beautiful villa by the Mediterranean, the eldest child of a well-off French family. From the outside, it looked idyllic. But young Yves was a fragile, delicate boy, quiet and inward, more interested in fabric than in the rough games of other children. At school, he was tormented for it. Bullied badly, singled out for being gentle in a world that punished gentleness in boys. He would later say those years left a wound in him that never fully closed. He retreated into a private world, sketching costumes and dressing tiny figures in clothes he designed himself. That wounded inward child had one astonishing gift. He could draw clothes like almost no one alive. By his early teens, he was designing real gowns for his mother and sisters, garments a seamstress could actually cut and sew. At 17, he traveled to Paris with a folder of sketches. He entered a prestigious design competition run by the international wool trade and won first prize. One design, a simple black cocktail dress, marking him as far beyond his years. It brought him to the attention of the most important man in fashion, Christian Dior himself, whose new look had rebuilt French fashion after the war. Dior hired the teenager on the spot, bringing him into the most powerful fashion house on earth as his personal assistant. This is where Yves learned the machine of high fashion from the inside. A great couture house in 1950s, Paris was a small army of seamstresses working by hand, each gown taking hundreds of hours. Yves absorbed all of it, not just how to dream a dress, but how the money moved from the couture salon down to the perfume counter. For 3 years, he worked at the side of the master. And then, in 1957, the unthinkable happened. Christian Dior died suddenly of a heart attack at just 52 years old at a spa in Italy. The House of Dior, the most important in the world, was left without its genius. And in a decision that stunned Paris, they handed the entire house to the shy young assistant. Yves Saint Laurent was 21 years old, and he had been made head of Dior. His first collection for them saved the house and made him famous overnight. The wounded boy from Oran was now the crown prince of French fashion at 21 years old, with the whole industry at his feet. It was a fairy tale. And within 3 years, it would collapse so completely that the young genius would end up in a hospital bed, discarded by the very house he had saved. What happened to him next would break something in him that never fully healed. The fall came fast, and it came from an unexpected place. In 1960, France was at war in Algeria, the very country where Yves had been born, and he was conscripted into the French army. For a man as fragile as Yves, it was catastrophic. Within weeks, he suffered a severe breakdown and was hospitalized, treated for his collapse in ways that, by many accounts, damaged him deeply and for a long time. And while he lay in that hospital bed, the House of Dior quietly replaced him. He had saved their house. He had made them millions. And the moment he was weak, they let him go. It was a betrayal that cut to the bone, and it taught him a bitter lesson about the business he had given his life to. But Yves was not finished. He had something the House of Dior did not. He had a partner. His name was Pierre Berge, a sharp, ambitious businessman who had become Yves's lover and his fierce protector. Berge looked at the broken young genius the industry had discarded, and he saw the most valuable talent in the world going spare. Together, in 1961, they did something audacious. They started their own house. They called it Yves Saint Laurent, and it would change fashion forever. But keep one thing in mind as the empire rises, because it matters later. The same wound that drove him to create, the raw nerve that made him feel everything more than other people, was still there underneath the success. Fame would not heal it. Fame would feed it. Through the 1960s and 70s, Yves Saint Laurent dressed the modern woman for a modern world. In 1966, he gave women le smoking, a tuxedo suit, taking the most powerful symbol of male elegance and handing it to them. Women had been told to look soft. Yves told them they could look powerful. A year earlier, he had turned the abstract paintings of Piet Mondrian into shift dresses, blocks of pure color that became some of the most famous garments of the century. And then he changed the business of fashion itself. In 1966, he opened a boutique called Rive Gauche and launched one of the first true designer, ready-to-wear lines. Until then, a designer name meant couture, gowns sewn for the very rich. Yves put his name onto clothes an ordinary woman could buy. This is how a modern fashion empire makes its money. The couture on the runway is the dream. The ready-to-wear and the perfume are the fortune. The wounded boy had built one of the greatest fashion empires in history. And at the exact moment the world crowned him, something began to go wrong inside him that all the money and all the fame could not touch. He was quietly drowning, and almost no one could see it. If a story like this holds you, take 1 second to hit that like button and subscribe to House of Ruin. Every empire we open up here looks flawless from the outside, a name the whole world knows and trusts. Our job is to show you what is buried underneath it, the genius, the betrayal, and the ruin the advertising was built to hide. Now, back to that man alone in the Paris apartment. Because at the same time the empire was reaching its peak, the man was beginning to lose himself. His fragrances had become some of the best-selling on the entire planet. One of them, launched in the 1970s with a name meant to shock, sold in staggering numbers. The business had exploded into a global empire worth hundreds of millions of dollars, the YSL name worn on every continent. And the higher the empire climbed, the darker things became behind the doors. The pressure on Yves was relentless. 2 full collections a year, each expected to be a work of genius, the eyes of the whole world upon him, and a fragile mind that had never healed from childhood, from the army, from the hospital. He was celebrated as a living legend, and privately he was crumbling under the weight of it. He came to rely on alcohol and on other substances to get through the demands placed on him. What began as a way to cope became a dependency that shadowed him for decades. Those close to him watched a brilliant, sensitive man slowly damaging himself. The mechanism was cruel. The pressure created the pain fed the habits deepened the depression. And through all of it, twice a year, he still had to walk out and present a collection the world would judge as genius or failure. There was no pause button on an empire that carried his name. And there was one man who decided that the world could never be allowed to know how bad it had become. To understand how the truth stayed hidden for so long, you have to understand him. His relationship with Pierre Berge was its own storm. Partners in love and in business, bound together completely. Berge was the steel of the operation, handling the money and the ruthless decisions the fragile Yves could not face, guarding the genius like a treasure. But love and business under that pressure is a volatile mixture. The 2 men fought bitterly, separated, came back together, and stayed tangled for the rest of Yves's life, even when it hurt them both. Berge understood something cold and true. Yves the man might be breaking, but Yves the name was worth a fortune, and the name had to be protected at all costs, even from Yves himself. And the parties. In the 1970s, Yves moved through a glittering, decadent world of nightclubs and celebrity and excess. That world fed his art, giving him the images and the energy that poured into his collections. And it also fed his worst habits, surrounding a vulnerable man with every temptation at once. He designed by day at the highest level in fashion, and he came apart by night. To escape it, he turned to Morocco. In Marrakesh, he and Berge kept a home and a garden of blue walls and quiet color, far from the noise of Paris. It became his refuge, the one place the pressure could not reach him. He would retreat there to recover again and again, and then return to the machine that was consuming him. There were breakdowns, there were retreats from public life, long stretches where the most famous designer in the world simply disappeared from view, hidden away and unwell, while Pierre Berge kept the machine running and the truth quiet. The empire needed Yves to be a genius. It was never able to let him be a broken man. And the gap between the two was slowly pulling him apart. He would hold on for decades longer than anyone expected. But the man who walked out to take his final bow would be almost unrecognizable from the golden boy who had once saved the house of Dior. What the years did to him is the saddest part of the whole story. By the closing decades of the 20th century, Yves Saint Laurent had become a fragile, almost ghostly figure. The wild energy of the early years had given way to something sadder and quieter. He spent more time away from the public eye, often at his garden in Marrakesh, where he found some peace. He was frequently unwell. The years of pressure and self-destruction had taken a heavy toll on a man who had never been strong to begin with. And yet the genius never fully left him. Even diminished, even suffering, he could still produce moments of breathtaking beauty on the runway, reminders of why the world had fallen in love with him in the first place. In 2002, after 4 decades at the top, Yves Saint Laurent gave a final, emotional farewell and retired. In his speech, he spoke openly, in a way that startled people, about the anguish that had shadowed his life, the fears and the depressions, the price he had paid. It was the confession of a man who had given everything to his art and been hollowed out by it. He lived quietly for a few more years, cared for, out of the storm at last. Yves Saint Laurent died in 2008 at the age of 71 in Paris. Pierre Berge, the man who had loved him, fought with him, and protected him for half a century, was at his side to the end. The man was gone. The empire he built only grew larger. The YSL name today is worth billions, one of the crown jewels of the global luxury industry, its perfumes and its clothes sold in every corner of the earth. The tuxedo he gave women is now simply part of how the world dresses. His influence is everywhere, woven so deeply into modern fashion that most people no longer even see it. And here is the cruel truth at the center of it all. The thing that made Yves Saint Laurent a genius was that he felt everything too much. He could sense beauty and longing in a way almost no one else could, and turn it into cloth. But a person who feels everything too much feels the pain too much. The same raw nerve that produced the most beautiful clothes in the world could not protect itself from the world. He dressed millions of women in strength and confidence. He gave them armor against a hard world. He was never able to make any for himself. The empire survived. It is worth billions today. The name is everywhere. But the boy from Oran, the fragile child who felt too much and built all of it out of that feeling, was gone long before his body was. The world kept the clothes. It lost the man who made them. If this is the kind of story you want more of, subscribe to House of Ruin and leave a comment telling us which empire we should take apart next. A fashion house? A fortune? A famous name with something dark buried under it? There are more of these coming, and every single one begins the same way, with a name the whole world knows, and a history almost nobody has heard.